To your point, Senator Elizabeth Warren wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal recently calling on the SEC to quote-unquote suit up. She wants you to
We're already suited up. We're already suited up.
Welcome back to the Crypto is Key conversation. And like I told you in our previous video about Sam Bankman-Fried admitted to fraud to CoffeeZilla in an interview, we're getting into what I wanted to cover in this Yahoo Finance interview with Chairman Gensler. And just look at the arrogant, cheesy, fronting smile that he has. And just the beginning of just this segment and this part of the interview, it just irritates the heck out of me. But I want to go through a couple of these and kind of talk about and break down some of the points that he's talking about and just see how he's contradicting himself in regards of him hurting actual markets and the real investors that he so-called set out to protect. So let's listen into this.
You to crack down on crypto using your existing authority. My question is, do you feel
Have you ever met Gubir Grewal, who runs our Division of Enforcement? We're suited up.
Okay, here's my question though, Chair. Do you feel you have enough authority, or do you feel that you need legislation for more authority from Congress?
I feel that we have enough authority. I really do in this space. Could we use greater resources, appropriations? Absolutely. Could we use maybe a little more extraterritorial reach overseas? Yes. But I also think it's important not to do any harm. We have $100 trillion capital markets. It's not a small number. Even our stock markets, approximately 35 or 40.
So literally, that's just what I wanted to cover within this segment right here. So he says you want to do no harm to the markets. Man, you are just torching. You're torching people. You're torching markets. You're affecting literally active crypto stuff, real investors. I mean, just alone. We'll talk about something recent with the library versus SEC. Like, who are you protecting in that lawsuit that you're so proud of? That you're going around gloating, saying we did this and we did that. We're bringing people into compliance and this and that. It's like, no, you're strangleholding and bullying people. Who did you protect in the library versus SEC case? Really? And then you got like Carbon Neutral had put up this, you've seen this image going around. You got Gary Gensler connecting to Glenn Ellison and Caroline Ellison, who's connected to Sam Bankman-Fried and the whole FTX collapse. I mean, it's just crazy. But I wanted to touch on just that part of it. And obviously there's more, and I highly recommend you come into this and just listen to our literal representation for investor protection in the United States of America, Chairman Gensler. It's absolutely crazy. Jeremy Hogan says, what a great analogy. Also, he's responding to Walter Bloomberg here. Says, and excuse me, I can't zoom in. I literally either got jacked or lost my mouse and keyboard that goes with my iMac here. And I don't know how to zoom in with this, with the Logi. I got like a little cheap set until I can get a new one in. But this is what we got. It says U.S. SEC Chair Gensler says crypto intermediaries, which he labels as crypto casinos, should come into compliance with law. Yahoo Finance interview. So Jeremy Hogan says, what a great analogy. If you go to a casino and buy a bunch of chips to gamble, those chips aren't securities of the casino because there are no post-sale obligations to the purchaser. Thanks, Mr. Gensler, for the great analogy. And I said the arrogance in the interview is shameful. We don't want to harm markets. You harm, yet he is harming markets. The front he puts on is shameful. And that's just straight up, man. We're going to play a segment of this. It says, quote, the entrepreneurs in the field have chosen. It's a choice to try and skirt the law, whether they are setting up overseas or servicing overseas actors. So let's listen into this one. This one irritates the heck out of me too.
According to your calendar, you met with now former CEO of FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried, on March 29th of this year. Aside from that, had you met with him any other times, and what was your impression of him when you met with him?
Again, I'm not going to speak to anyone matters. I make, as my predecessors did as well, my calendar public. And we meet with market participants, and the basic message that I've had is the same public message as a private message. Come into compliance.
So real quick, he's talking about, as my predecessors did. It's the same roundabout, beating around the bush answer that he gives. You can answer, you clearly answer it in private settings. Don't act like you don't. You can answer these tough questions. And these interviewers, I mean, I get it. They want to get the story and they want to keep that relationship and that open door. But it's like, we need some interviewers that are going to continue to press, like CoffeeZilla, for example. If we got CoffeeZilla in front of this gentleman, or, John Deaton, someone that could really like press this individual Gary Gensler on his answers and his actions, we might get some more information. But for him to say, I got a public calendar, it's like, okay, well, your public calendar isn't even up to date, and is all the information even in there? I think we have up to like July or something. Like, okay, why isn't it current? You are a public representation of the people. You are set in place to protect investors, so-called investors that you are harming. Absolutely shameful, man. Let's continue on.
Our field will not last long outside of public policy norms. I might be technology neutral, but I'm paid not to be public policy neutral, and it's about protecting the investing public. The message has also been that we're not going to let the public all the safeguards down in this regard. So some of these platforms have come in and said, we want to continue running a commingled platform. We want to continue doing lending, trading, hedge fund functions, an exchange function, a custody function. We've said, no, you have to separate it out. Some have come in and said, can we have a lighter touch regulation? We've said, no. We said, no, the time-tested protection. And I want to say one other thing. It would not be...
So let me see if I can go back real quick. Look at his reaction. It's almost like it was a lie. And I'm not a body language expert or none of that. But the way he like hesitated, almost choked up as he's saying no, as he's talking about these lighter sentences, it's telling to me. And this is just my opinion. So let me see if I can go back real quick. Let me see.
The time-tested protection. And I want to say one other thing. It would not be fair to all the market participants. No.
Oh, right here. This
we
right
have
here.
A lighter touch regulation.
Lighter touch.
We've said no. We said no. The
I mean, okay. For me, when I seen that, knowing kind of the facts of what we've seen, he has all these meetings over 6 months with Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX. What the heck is he doing that for? What are you meeting with them for? You know what I'm saying? Why are they under the microscope and under scrutiny like Library and Ripple? What the heck? Okay, what about, the Celsius of the world and all those people? What about Do Kwon and them? And keep this in mind too. You are literally attacking legit companies that are trying to play by the so-called rules and books that you're throwing at them. And you're going after them, right? For people that are trying to do the right thing. But then again, you have your FTX and your Sam Bankman-Frieds. And we're not even bringing up the whole ETHgate scandal stuff. Okay, so I know Chairman Gensler wasn't so-called the SEC chair at the time, but still during this whole time, this Ripple versus SEC stuff, even with all the facts that have been surfaced, and these are facts that are not in dispute still to this day. But he claims, they come in for a lighter sentence or whatever the case is, but no, we don't. We have the same agenda as the private, as the public. It's like, no, you don't. You've literally been caught in this whole web of lies that you're displaying in this absolute blatant corruption from the whole Sam Bankman-Fried and all the connections that he has with his former boss and the meetings, and he completely dropped the ball. And we're going to cover some tweet threads that's covering that as well. But it's like the way he said that is just like, it was almost like a blatant lie. And you could tell by, just his reaction to this lady. She probably is like, if she knows anything of what we know, she's probably like, you full of crap. He's putting on this front. Let's continue on.
To protection. And I want to say one other thing. It would not be fair to all the market participants that comply today, the stock exchanges, the broker dealers, the asset managers called mutual funds, and even the folks that are managing hedge funds today.
He's talking about the incumbents, his buddies.
The market makers that are complying with their rules when they're trading and buying Apple stock or Ford Motor. Why should it be different here?
Yeah, to your point, I'm wondering if we need proof of reserves, but not only just proof of reserves, but a way to vet internal controls on these crypto firms. Because we look at Sarbanes-Oxley, and then we look at what happened as an example of the FTX situation. According to the bankruptcy filings, there was a huge failure of internal corporate controls. We know that FTX was technically audited, but that was not caught. So do we need some sort of rules in place for that
portion? They're in place. They're in place. See, here's the good news for the public. If you're, I look to you. The good news is, over decades, we've put in place. Congress put them in place by law. This agency, this great agency, put it in place through regulation. Basic rules around books and records, basic rules around internal controls, basic rules
So should we
around...
expect more enforcement action then?
Look, I can't speak of any one matter.
So you're talking about, you know, coming in and into compliance and keeping books and records and following these rules, but it's like he doesn't abide to them himself, even with his own personal fortune that has been exposed as well. I think it's like over 120 million that he's not even, you know, on record for, he's not registered for. I mean, think about just what I was talking about, the connections of the FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried, the meetings. He can't even keep his public calendar for the, you know, as a government official in the SEC, he can't even keep his public record accurate, first of all, and up to date. We can't even see that. And when it comes to us trying to get, you know, Freedom of Information Act request stuff, it's like a constant battle. But you're telling everyone else that they need to be compliant and they need to come in and do A, B, and C, and D, and they need to register. But it's like you yourself, as an individual in your own life, don't even do it. You as a SEC chairman, you don't do it, and you don't abide by those same laws that you are throwing at everybody else, and you're attacking the good characters within the community. Absolutely crazy. We're going to continue on in this nonsense.
This is a great agency. We have 1,300 people in our enforcement division. We have 1,100 people in our examination division. Mm-hmm. That's half of the agency. We oversee $100 trillion capital markets. We bring about 700 enforcement actions a year across insider trading and microcap fraud and books and records violations, as you talked about earlier. And yes, we have a robust enforcement history in the crypto space. I think over 100 actions, a couple dozen while I've been here as chair, against crypto exchanges, against crypto lending platforms, against, of course, tokens. We had a very big win recently in a case around a crypto token called Library. Unfortunately for the investing public, the entrepreneurs in this field have chosen, and it's a choice, they have chosen to try to skirt the law, whether they're setting up overseas and they're servicing overseas actors. That's for other jurisdictions, that's for other regulators around the globe. But if they're tapping into U.S. markets, they need to come into compliance.
To your point, so much.
So who is he talking about, though? It's like, okay, so they're saying they've chosen. What about all the stuff? Okay, and I hodl ETH, and I'm just saying, based on the information we have, the facts that are not in dispute, what about them? The whole ETHgate scandal, consensus and all them going overseas or, you know, going out of U.S. jurisdiction, if you will, to run that, right? What about, you know, Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX? Like, what about all those things? But those are people that you're so-called claiming, you know, they skirt this, they skirt that, right? And we obviously anticipate the SEC coming after Ethereum. I mean, that's kind of what we've been talking about in the community, right? So it's just kind of a waiting game to see what happens right there. And that's not even including, you know, what's going to happen with this whole Tether stuff. And I'm just bringing it up because it's a conversation that's been brought, okay? Obviously, I don't want anything terrible to happen in the community into crypto, but it happens. That's just how this space is, especially with it being so, as they say, so early, if you will, so in its infancy stage. But it's like, okay, you're talking about those individuals that trying to skirt the law and do things in an unjust way. But what about the good people, the true, you know, entrepreneurs, developers, the people that are truly trying to solve real world problems, creating these blockchain and these digital assets with true utility? You are the one driving these people outside of the United States. It's not them by choice. I mean, obviously they can choose to leave or stay, right? You're true there, but you're forcing people, entrepreneurs, you're forcing innovation outside of the US. And that's the sickening part about it. You're sitting up here all proud, stuck up, arrogant, shameful behavior with this front as if you're doing the right and just thing. That's the sickening part about it.
Much of this is happening overseas. We saw that with FTX. The international unit went down, brought the US unit down with it. Do you need better coordination with global authorities? How does that factor into your ability to police? We
have good coordination around the globe, but there are different laws, and particularly in small island jurisdictions in the Caribbean island, Cayman Islands, the Virgin Islands, Bahama, Bermuda, but sometimes outside of the Caribbean. You see some of these crypto entities are set up in the Seychelles or in Malta and the like. So we have our best coordinate.
I mean, that's enough of this segment that I wanted to talk about. But one thing I wanted to bring up that I was supposed to bring up in the last clip was the fact that he's talking about, he's pretty much saying we can utilize more resources, right, to further build their infrastructure. And when he's talking about that, he's talking about their ability to overregulate by enforcement and dominate the space, right? Why are you utilizing our resources to go after the likes of Kim Kardashian? Why are you going after Ripple? Why are you going after Library? What about all the other small projects, right? Why didn't you go after the truly blatant, bad, and corrupt actors that are in the space? Why didn't you utilize the resources for that? What are the taxpayer dollars going to? Are you really protecting investors and protecting markets? Are you truly harming protectors or investors and harming markets? That's the sickening part about it. Library had put up a great tweet in reference to this video we just watched. Says, the thing that makes Gary Gensler an absolute psychopath is that he knows the forms required to register security, for example, the 10Q, can't even be completed by public blockchains. It's literally impossible. Gensler knows this, and he takes advantage that the media doesn't. And that is just dirty. Eleanor Terry says, in a scathing letter to U.S. Comptroller General, Congressman Richie Torres requests the USGA conduct an independent review into the SEC and the Gary Gensler. Quote, when it comes to FTX, Gary Gensler fundamentally failed as a regulator. And that just literally hits it on the head. Absolutely. And it's blatant in multiple occasions. I mean, he's talking about setting a legacy for himself. I mean, you're literally setting a terrible precedent. I mean, it's over. I think the trust in the SEC in general has been lost. And to regain it, it almost needs a complete revamp and maybe a whole new agency in general. It's absolutely shameful that these are supposed to be the people that are supposed to be representing the everyday investor and protecting the everyday investor, but they're not. They're causing harm to the markets. He is causing direct harm to the investors he so-called set out to protect. And just like the last video, I wanted to end on this one right here from XRP Pharaoh. Says, well, I feel like some crap is about to go down. Absolutely. I think more pain is coming. Personally, not spreading FUD. I just got that feeling based on all the stuff that's been happening and just the uncertainties behind things, especially with Chairman Gensler and his over-regulation by enforcement tactics. Something's crazy happening. And that New Day saying that Congressman Tom Emmer talks about, man, I hope it's coming after Chairman Gensler and the SEC now before something crazy happens. But that's all I have for you. Make sure you come to the Crypto's Key Conversation YouTube channel. Subscribe. Follow us on Twitter at Crypto's Key 1. I really appreciate your support. With all that being said, stay strong out there. Be safe.